I would call to order the Village of Westmont Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for March 9, 2016. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Carmichael.
Here.
Commissioner Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Van Buren is here. Commissioner Pill.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner Bartel.
Here.
And Chairman Richard.
Here.
We have a quorum.
If you would please all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please, while I have you all standing, you've got to be sworn in if you desire to give any testimony either for or against any item on the agenda. So if you would please all raise your right hand. It won't hurt. There you go. I swear that any testimony I give this evening shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Okay, it looks like everybody's been sworn in. I would ask that you silence any and all electronic devices. We do have a sign-in sheet. Is it up on the podium, Jill?
Yes.
Okay, and anybody that wishes to speak, if you would just come up and sign in and announce your name for us. Okay, first item of business is approval of the minutes of our February 10th meeting. May I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
So moved?
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Bartel. Question on the motion? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Carmichael.
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp.
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Pill.
Abstain?
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel.
Yes.
Chairman Richard.
Abstain. Okay, we have enough votes. So the minutes as presented are hereby adopted. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a bit of a quandary here. First item on the agenda this evening is SKE Property Investments, and I would beg if you'd please let me know who you are. Okay. You're asking for some variances. To approve these variances, we need findings of fact. Our attorney has them, and he's delayed in traffic. Would you mind if we moved you to the second item? Okay, thank you for your indulgence in this matter.
Absolutely not.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Planning and Zoning Item 16005, Village of Westmont regarding a zoning code text amendment for the following. A, amend Appendix A, Section 7.06 of the Westmont Zoning Code regarding the B3 Special Development District to allow for residential uses as a special use. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're here tonight because the village has been approached by ownership of the property at 3500 Midwest Road, the Hilton, as a request to diversify uses at the property. Before I go into discussion what that is, I kind of want to give a little background to the B3 Special Development District. This was exclusive to the Hilton property when it first developed in the 1980s. This is when the golf course was developed. This was when the hotel was developed. The uses listed were somewhat high intense. They were offices. There were 3 office towers proposed. There was the hotel, the golf course, ancillary uses to those. Over time, what occurred was the market kind of dictated what was happening there. In the 1990s, there was a parcel in the center, which is this R4PD, which now has townhomes and single-family homes on it, was the site for the 3 office towers. The office market didn't progress like they thought, so they approached the village in the 1990s and said, we think this is a good residential development, and it is a high-quality residential development there. So the B3 use kind of was starting to introduce a residential element into the overall district as early as the 90s. Now, having been approached by the Hilton, there is a residential component to their request. And at this point, they cannot make that request because residential is not a use that is allowable in the B3 district. Staff does not support what happened in the 90s where it was kind of carved out as a residential district. There's not the space. There was a large amount of stormwater and I guess wetland in the space there, so it surrounds the houses. That's not existing there now. Most of the remaining land is developed as parking lot. So what the staff is looking into is, could this be allowed as a special use? So it's not a use that's allowed by right. They would need to approach the village with a proposal, a thoughtful proposal that takes into account both introducing residential into a B3 district as well as amenities to the residents that move into that district. So it would have to come back before planning and zoning. It would have to go before village board. It's just we're looking into, can they make the request for the residential? The Hilton did present the preliminary plan to the Economic Development Committee on March 2nd. It did receive a unanimous approval, although there was a large amount of public comment and commissioner and staff comment and commissioner comment on things need to be tweaked. There's a lot of elements that make a high quality development. It would need to be analyzed, traffic studies, market studies. We would need to see that it could be supported. So there was, other than the introduction of, is residential a good use on the site, the conversation tended to stop there, that we said there's a lot of work to do to actually introduce it once it comes time. Staff is very supportive that if residential is introduced, that there should be no negative impacts on any primary, secondary, or special uses. The B3 district should be particularly cognizant of amenities that serve the residential directly. That means that they have space outside, they have walking trails, they have amenities, as the golf course, although it is very green, is not accessible at this point. So staff presents the text amendment to the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration as a special use within the B3 district, and I'm available for questions if you have those.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask a question of Joe for clarification?
Of course.
You mentioned the Hilton on several occasions. It's really not the Hilton. They're only the operator of the hotel. It's really a private entity that's developing this property. I think just for the TV audience and the folks here, there should be a clarification as to who is the owner really and asking for this. It's really not the Hilton.
There is an entity called the HARP Group, I think is their formal name, that owns the property.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. At this time then, since you are the presenter, Joe, I'll rely on you to answer questions, but I'm going to open up public comment now. So anybody from the public who will speak on this, please?
The attorney for the HARP Group is present. If you'd like the attorney
please,
perhaps to go
yes.
first in case there's any initial questions.
Absolutely.
I apologize, I snuck in late.
You got to swear.
He'll need to be sworn
Were
in.
you sworn in?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I swear that any testimony I give this evening shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And if you would sign it, please.
They carved out the R4. Right. It was all B3.
Good evening.
My name is Dan Shapiro. I'm here on behalf of the HARP Group. And I would just like to kind of echo what staff just said. We are working with staff, and they have brought to us their concerns regarding traffic, amenities, et cetera. And as most recent as probably 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, we've been consulting with staff on how to address some of those concerns, not only for staff, but for the neighborhood. And for the better of the project. So we are working diligently to, again, address these concerns. I know it's the village's request for the text amendment, but we would be the beneficiary, so we are most interested in these proceedings. We've also had, not myself personally, but I know Peter Duman from the HARP Group has had close communications with the Homeowners Association, as well as some other stakeholders for this project.
Okay, very good. Now, but I would remind everybody that there is no formal request to build any building. The only thing we are talking about tonight is to change the village ordinance, to recommend to change or not to change the village ordinances that would allow possible residential development in the future in a B3 district. That's all we're talking about. We are not talking about if he might come in to see later on to try to build a building or what have you. So please, everybody, keep that in mind. Okay.
I'm available for questions, but I'll sit up here.
Okay, very fine. Please, from the public, anybody who wishes to talk.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jonathan Wassell, and our office, Keogh and Moody, represents the condominium association that was the residential area that was alluded to on the plan. It's the residents of Oak Brook Hills Condominium Association. Our office represents the corporate entity, the corporation, if you will. I know there's a number of individual homeowners here from the association, and they may speak on their own behalf as property owners, but we don't speak for the individual owners. We speak for the corporate entity. And I can appreciate what the chair, Mr. Chair, said about this isn't about the building, this is about the text amendment as proposed by the staff. But the association's position is that this is still premature, that a text amendment as proposed to the special use in the B3 zone would effectively clear out or go against the intent and purpose as we see it and as we read the B3 zone district. Prior to the text amendment, there was no residential use in this area. It was mixed commercial. I like to liken it to, it's like a Chicago loop. You have hotels, restaurants, office buildings. You don't have residential in the heart of the loop. So, and the reasoning for that, and B3 in the municipal code specifically speaks to reasons why they have secondary uses. The secondary uses is to allow occupants of the zone district to not have to drive everywhere, to alleviate traffic congestion so that they can walk. They have readily available restaurants or dry cleaners or social activities. So we think until that the commission can review, analyze, and even basically look into the traffic study that has been alluded to. I understand a preliminary plan has been submitted by the HART Group, that until they have an opportunity to really review these plans, that it's premature to look at rezoning, because we don't know what this will open the door to the B3 zoned area. And traffic is a main concern. I understand as the plan has it, and this plan could just be used as a case study. Again, I know it's not a building, but, or we're considering the building now, but it could be used as a case study as to, the hotel has currently a little over 1,000 parking spaces that have been filled routinely filled. But with the proposal as we see it now, that would cut that in half. That the commission hasn't even considered the marketability issue of the surrounding area, the traffic congestion that this would create. And again, it is our position that it's premature to consider the text amendment before a little bit more analysis and looking at the plan has been considered. And again, I thank you for your time. That's the association position on the matter.
Okay, but you alluded to a rezoning. There is nothing about rezoning here. We are amending our text amendment.
Correct. And By rezoning, I meant you're effectively rezoning it, because allowing for residential use into the B3 zone district, the B3 zone district has that's not what it is anymore, because that's, the purpose and intent was to not have residential. So it's effectively rezoning, so I apologize if I misspoke, and I understand it's just a text to the special use, but that would be effectively what it would be doing.
Okay. Thank you very much. You care to rebut or to add anything, or shall I?
Just to give a little bit of background, when the HARP group initially approached staff with the proposal, they talked about doing it all at once or breaking it up into a text amendment. Staff thought that a text amendment would be more effective because it allows us to know if the commission and the board is even in favor of changing the text. So we didn't want to have the developer come in and spend, thousands of dollars on plans and documentation if the board isn't in favor of doing a text amendment to allow for residential. So we thought it would be more appropriate to break it into two parts.
Wise choice. I think you did well. Okay, please, next person from the public, if you'll sign it.
Good evening. My name is Brian Butler. I live at 19 Willowcrest at the residences next door to Oak Brook Hills Resort. I'm not going to focus on the development that people are talking about. I was asked not to. I'm really more focused on the text amendment itself. I've been a commercial real estate broker in this market for 35 years. I've watched all the great projects you guys have brought in. Standard Market, Mariano's is just about open, both Zone B3. As an example, I can't comprehend in the last 50 years why someone else has never come forward and says, let's put in your zoning book the right to downzone a piece of property to residential. Because if that's in there, once you pass this, and the village board passed it, if it's in there, if Mariano's decides they don't have enough parking, they can come in and say, we're going to at least ask for an apartment building in our parking lot. It's basically the same thing. And the other issue that I wanted to address was your comprehensive plan is what you use as a guide for future development. This was done as a PUD, and it was done with the parking that was required at the time of the development from when Balsamo and Olson and the Butler family brought it in. In the event you allow residential in this, I think your ordinance should state, if you're downzoning a property in a parking lot or downzoning an improved property, that any parking that is taken needs to be replaced on site so that it doesn't create a hardship for the existing development to operate.
Point well taken.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome, sir. Who will speak next, please? Don't be afraid. Come on, we don't bite. In the back.
Hi, I'm Kathy Fisher. I live at 27 Willowcrest in the villages of Oak Brook Hills. My concerns about amending it to B3 are really twofold. My concern is the quality of life and the effect that it would have on the property values of the people in the villages of Oak Brook Hills. Quality of life really comes down to there is one road in and one road out. There is no other way to get into our development. And if we have a multifamily unit in the parking lot, it concerns me for fire, for ambulances, and what the response time, how it would affect the response time. Also, if we have dense multifamily, I would be concerned about the security of our development with the increase in the traffic. Also, on our property values, we have seen a significant increase in our assessments, so in the valuation of our properties. And I think you have to take into consideration what type of effect it would have on our valuation because there's no other way but to go through that multifamily development. So, thank you.
Thank you. There's,
Hi, my name is Lori Pearsall. I live at 46 Willowcrest Drive in the residences of Oak Brook Hills. I really wanted to emphasize the increase in density that we're looking at. We only have to go by the proposal we've seen, the latest of which looks like it's calling for some 350 apartment units. So somewhere between 350 and 700 new bodies are going to be living very close to what is already a fairly dense area. We're the only ones that live there to see not what it's like at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, but what it looks like in the middle of summer during a wedding weekend, what it looks like when we can't hear our guests when we sit outside because the music is so loud at the hotel. We've been good neighbors as far as working with the hotel, and we feel like for the most part, the hotel has been good neighbors for us in terms of trying to mitigate those issues. We know when you add 700 new people, there are going to be other issues. It's hard for us to look at the plan and not say, how will those people live? Where will they walk their dogs? Where will they go out for a cigarette? Where will they take a walk in the morning? They're already whoever's in the hotel already comes over into our area.
if I may interrupt, though, what we are not discussing is a proposal that is not before us.
I understand.
What we
I'm
are
sorry.
discussing again is, do we want to recommend approval of residential in a B3?
And I'm sorry, let me limit it to just that. When you look
Yes,
at residential in that area, that's what we're looking at, is adding the bodies that residences would have. And so I just want to make the point that there's nowhere on the golf course or for them to go. So we know what will probably happen if residential's allowed. And that's what my concern is about the B3. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, please, who will speak next? You've got a lot of people here. I know you're all concerned. Don't be afraid. Come and give us your feelings. This is what we need.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Simi Sachdeva, and I live in...
Please speak up.
My name is Simi Sachdeva, and I live in 24 Willowcrest Drive. I understand what you're saying. I do not know the technicalities of this issue, but I'll tell you, if you go and visit that place, and it's a parking lot right on top of the hotel, right in front, and they're creating a building, they're thinking of creating this building. I lived in a high-rise building of 45 stories where there were only 500 units, and it was like a city by itself in Chicago. And this is 350 units they are planning to open. Imagine it right on the road at the edge, and going backwards, we don't know, right next to the hotel. And then there is a huge pool, too. We are not talking about the pool, but another building right there. If you visit this parking lot, you wonder how even they came up with this idea to even this small place to create a city by itself, the way it sounds and the way it looks. And it's amazing even to fathom that did they even think when you are entering the area how it's going to look? This building, they're putting the building wherever the space is allowing it. Okay, we cannot put the pool here because there's not enough room, so let's put it there. That's how it sounds like. It's a parking lot, and it's not like in the city or in a village, or it's a lot of space where you can open a huge Olympic-sized pool as well as a building right there next to us, same road entering. And it's a big concern, and it's a very strange feeling, too, that how did it come about? Thank you.
Please, if you would care to add to what the people's concerns are.
Yes. And as I hear it, many of the concerns would be addressed at a public hearing.
Correct.
In the future.
I keep trying to bring this up, but...
Yeah, and I respect the all the speakers, and I think they bring up good points that, we all want to hear, but at a
They're
different
premature.
time and a different place. And the other thing is, to a certain extent, the die has been cast, because we have the B3 golf course, and there's an R4 already there, residential subdivision. So if one were to consider adding a residential subdivision, there's one of two ways to do it. Rezone, like what there is in the R4, adjacent to the R4, and create a new zoning district, or consider modifying the text of the zoning ordinance so that the village has more control. And by that, the residential would be a special use. So it gives the village more control over that type of use, further control if it were a text amendment as opposed to rezoning. So I agree with staff's approach. And as you know, a special use can attach reasonable conditions, et cetera. So it's a more thorough process than if it were strict rezoning. And through this more strict process than a straight rezoning, a lot of these concerns can, should, and will be addressed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Please, from the public, no, up here, because the home audience cannot hear you.
I know that the residences was zoned for office, not business, correct? Previously?
It was previously all zoned B3, and it was intended for 3 10-story office buildings, where the residences
And
currently
then
sit.
when the petitioner who built the residences came in, they didn't ask for this type of amendment, did they? They just asked for rezoning with a PUD?
Yes, they asked for a rezoning.
Okay, so in other words, it was not a B3 zoning, it was office zoning? Or was it office zoning with, or B3 with office?
It was a B3 zoning that allowed for offices.
Okay, thank you.
Please, someone from the public, if you would, sir.
Hello, I'm Tom Reynolds, and I live at 42 Willowcrest Drive. I just bring up the single point of the parking. That hotel needs all of that parking. To try and have any kind of residential in there would not allow enough parking for the hotel. Last Friday and Saturday, we had pictures, one of the owners here, the parking lot was jam-packed. That is very common, that whole parking lot is jam-packed. Taking away any of that parking would cause a severe problem for the community. So I think any kind of changing of the code and eliminating any of that parking would be a severe problem for the hotel and for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Please? No other comments?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm an attorney, and I'm here on behalf of one of the residents in the residential area,
State your name.
William Suriano. And perhaps what might give some folks some comfort is if someone described in more detail how the process would work from here. Because you folks are voting on a text amendment, which it sounds to me like you're probably going to grant tonight. And how then will things proceed so that these folks know when they'll have that public input so that they can voice the kinds of concerns that you're hearing tonight but really aren't germane to what you're dealing with?
I would defer to our attorney.
So the next step is if the applicant gets their plans and materials into the Village of Westmont Community Development Office in time to meet a publication deadline, this will be set for an April public hearing back before this body. And it would be the second Wednesday in April. Notice would get sent out to all property owners within 250 feet of the property. So that would be mailed. Notice would be published in the newspaper. Notice would be published on the village's website. And the community development director would give you guys the courtesy, I believe, of a phone call just to make sure you're aware of it, because I think she's well aware of your interest in the project. So if that were to occur and this proceeds in April, then we'd have a public hearing, much like we're having tonight, where the petitioner would have their plans, engineering, architectural, full elevations, a site plan, plat of subdivision, anything else they're requesting, and make a presentation. You guys would have the opportunity to review that and state your opinion for or against. At that point, then, this body's a recommending body. They'd recommend it up to the village board, and probably within a month or so, it would go to the village board for a final vote.
Anybody else from the public?
Hi, my name is Katie Canino, and I live at 15 Willow Crest Drive. And I think you've pretty much heard this from a few people, but I guess I just want to say it again, is that the parking lot is crowded. If you rezone this for residential, if it's not this developer, you know, let's not even go there. It'll be the next developer. I mean, once you guys pass the rezonement, if it's not this time, it's 2 years or it's whenever. I would think you would be asking for a failure of this hotel. It's one of the only hotels I know of in this area that has a golf course. You have people that come and golf there and spend money, I would assume, at the hotel, even if they don't stay there. But if they come and people can't park, and people who stay at the hotel can't park because it was rezoned and this piece is carved out, it seems to me that it would be setting the hotel up for failure.
Thank you. Okay, last chance. Anybody else from the public who wishes to speak?
Right, because that's not what we're here for.
As I reiterated before, this is a text amendment to your zoning ordinance.
Correct.
As a plan commission, as you all sit, have you ever done a text amendment to the zoning ordinance where you downzoned a piece of property?
Not that I recollect offhand.
I mean, I've seen, you know, I've seen residential go to commercial all over town for developments. But I've just asked if you've ever seen a piece of commercial go to residential.
Jill, can you answer that?
Well, I mean, this property, the residences.
Yes.
It went from B3 to...
Yeah.
This one was,
Well, I consider commercial more retail, something that
but that wasn't a
generates-
text amendment. That was
rezoning, so that was not, so you have never done a text amendment. This is something new.
We've done many text
I mean,
amendments,
to,
but not
to a
in that.
down zone.
Not to downzone,
Yeah.
not that I can
I mean,
recollect.
and just based on that, I think it should require a little more study to consider, because once it's in there, once it's in your book, it's in your book. And granted, they still have to come in for special use and present and everything else, but this closes the door for future people that want to take an empty car dealership and come in and say, well, it's in your ordinance, so I'm going to apply for it. It eliminates that whole question of due process versus coming in to try to rezone something altogether.
I believe this is unique to the B3, and I believe this is the only B3 property we have in the entire town.
Correct.
Correct.
So it would be unique to there. It wouldn't be like any car dealership.
Or
mostly
Mariano's.
or Mariano's that are in a B2 or a C1 or what have you.
That B3 was
this
unique
is
to this
unique.
development.
The B3 was, for this,
Yeah.
because
Only for
of
that
back
development.
when, so the zoning has changed, granted, for new Marianos and for Standard Market and other new developments in town. They're not zone B3?
No,
No,
B2,
no.
and that is not a new zoning classification, as you would know.
B2's been around forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Correct.
B3 is a higher zoning that did allow B2's uses, correct?
Not all of them, but
Not
there-
all of them, but quite a
Look at the
few.
ordinance, there's a list of acceptable now commercial uses that are allowed. It's a fairly broad range, so in lieu of apartment buildings, which aren't allowed now, there could be restaurants and office buildings and other high-intensity commercial uses.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
You're more than welcome, sir. Okay, everybody here, last time. Will anybody talk? Some people are being encouraged to, or?
I'm Andrea Ferrara. I'm in 14 Willow Crest Drive. I guess our attorney for the board, for our association, said it to begin with, and that is that you would consider holding off on this until you have more information of what this will all do to this development. And that's, I think, what we're asking for, that the vote doesn't go through tonight until you have more knowledge of what this could cause, and that's really what we're here for. Okay?
I'm sure the board members will consider that, ma'am. Okay, that's it? Nobody raise your hands? We're going to close the public comment. Let's start with Commissioner Bartel, if you would, please.
Well, this is, it's a lot of information, and I very much am appreciative of the public comment, because I think this is where you live, and this is what you're concerned about. And I can see both sides. I think it's very difficult to say no and close the door on all future possible residences there. So as long as, I mean, it's just the text amendment that we're doing tonight, but it actually is a much bigger issue, as you can see, and that we can appreciate. And I guess I would say, and I want to hear from the other commissioners, because it's hard going first sometimes, because you want to hear the input from everybody. But at this point in time, I would probably support the text amendment piece, but be concerned about the future and the expansion of that area in lieu of the parking issues and so forth. So I like the idea of the strict rezoning and the staff oversight. So I think from this point, I'd like to hear from the other commissioners before I make a decision.
But Commissioner Bartel, once, we go to Commissioner Strong, everybody's going to get it. We're going to have a round robin at the end, so we all exchange ideas.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Sharp.
Commissioner Sharp, please.
Yeah, I echo your sentiment that it's a complicated issue, for sure. This B3, so just so we're clear, this is, right now, it's only this property that's zoned B3.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. When I read the B3, when it was originally, I guess as it's crafted now, as a intensive use business development, residential sticks out like a sore thumb. Like when you read the text, it clearly doesn't, to me, it clearly doesn't make sense or jive with what's currently there, or what was planned to be there. But now we have, in the 90s, we had the R4 district come in, and that did set a precedent, I feel, of some kind for residential in that area. But not much changed the text of the B3. So that B3 still stayed the same. But so I'm conflicted with what's the text reading, and as a commissioner, I like my ducks in a row with the text, and I feel like it doesn't belong in the text. Residential sticks out as improper use in the B3, but looking at a specific site and understanding the struggles of office towers at this economic point in time, it is understandable that we'd be looking for alternative uses to improve the site. So that coupled with the R4 that's already there lends me to think maybe we should continue the conversation, which would mean voting in favor of it tonight. So I'm still torn, and I'll make up my mind shortly.
Commissioner Thomas.
We're being asked tonight by several people to wait until we see more specific details on what is coming, what their plans are in that. When in fact, tell me if I'm wrong or not, but if we vote no on the text amendment, there is no future plans.
Correct.
You will never see what's there in order to agree or disagree. It would seem to me, and like everybody else, I'd like to hear other views in that, but that plan that's out there possibly that addresses everybody's concerns, and then the hotel has its adequate parking, and people can walk, and say that plan might be out there. It might not be out there. But we're not going to see it at all if we vote no on the text amendment. Our job here is to look at these plans when they come before us and decide whether it's a good plan or not. Now, granted, you'll have to come back and state your case and they will have to do their due diligence also. I'm a little leery about taking out the opportunity for these plans to be presented. And we can say no, or we can say yes, and present our opinion to the trustees. But if we say no to the text amendment, there will be no plans, and I think that kind of limits us. But then again, I don't. You're going to have to convince me strongly about residential in this location. You know, it's weird that it's already here. You know, on the property. I don't know how you can have it on the property and say, okay, no more. Show me a good plan, and you can have additional property. If it's not a good plan, we're saying no. But at least give them an opportunity to present the plan, and then you can say yes or no, and then we can say yes or no. That's where I'm at. I'm not done, but that's where I'm at right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Pill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several things. I'd just like to clarify one point, that we are a recommending body. So irregardless of what our outcome is tonight, this will go to the village board. Whether we vote to send it up with a recommendation or not a recommendation, it will continue up another notch before that's finally approved. This to me is an interesting situation. We have homeowners who benefited from a change in zoning, saying that there should be no further change in zoning so that there can't be any other homeowners in the property. So, you know, it benefited this group, perhaps not directly at this point, but indirectly as far as the historical perspective is concerned. It benefited this group to have a change from B3 to R4. This zoning downgrade, as the gentleman, Mr. Butler, has stated, I believe, allows us to have a lot more control over this particular situation, and that's a good thing. I agree with Commissioner Thomas that if you don't approve it, we'll never see what can come of this. Now, right now, in the present situation, they could come in, the owners of the property could come in, and they could ask for 10-story office buildings, because that is allowed, and that's part of the B3 case, and you'd have probably perhaps a bigger situation than you would depending on what their future and final plans would look like. I'm not naive enough to think that if we approve this, we're going to get 2 townhomes on that property. I understand that. But you won't get a chance to see what it is, and we would have strict control over it. There's also a little bit of a chicken and egg thing here, and I can understand that. I have asked for the parking study and market analysis, and those are a considerable cost to do those. And I think that there has to be some potential that their case can be taken to the next level to go ahead and invest that kind of money as far as blueprinting, design elements, parking, and marketing analysis. So those are, I think, very, very specific. Against this project, we have the B3 calls for decreased dependency, and we're actually increasing the dependency because these are not going to be self-sustaining apartments or something that goes into these residences. The apartment is something that decreases dependency. People have their meals there, they sleep there, they have most of their services there. This is going to be adverse to that. And that's one reason to perhaps not take a look at this or not to approve it. There's also a lot of talk. I sat for 2 years on the committee to write the comprehensive plan. And we have a large percentage in our town of multifamily housing. And this would further increase that imbalance, not any more that townhomes and condos would do, but it's also something to look at. But I think it's something to look at in the second step of this dance, which is after this is either approved or disapproved. So in conclusion, I probably attend 6 to 8 events a year at the hotel. And that parking lot is often full. And I see that all the time. So I can clearly say that as a commissioner on planning and zoning, if this moves ahead and then we do receive a project in the next month, 2 or 3 months, whatever the time frame is, I will be very careful to make sure there is no decrease in parking, that the density issues that I saw at the Economic Development, I am the Planning and Zoning rep to the Economic Development Commission, that the density issues we saw are addressed, and that the wall-like structure is softened to reflect a graceful entry onto the property, and not something like the Great Wall of China all of a sudden just pops up right in front of your automobile at the circle there. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that if this goes through, and I'm not sure how the commissioners will all vote on this, and I certainly can't presuppose what the village board will do, but I will pay very close attention to those 3 things and will not support a project that does not take into account those 3 things, particularly those 3 things. There probably are more, but at least those 3. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Van Buren.
We were asked in this letter, and it was reiterated, that it's premature to do this until we know more about it. Traffic studies, all the environmental impact studies, anything that would be involved with this, there would be no triggering mechanism to even study those if there were not an issue in front of us. So that would die immediately upon votes by us and the village board not to consider putting residential into this area. It's very hard for me, and as it is for you, to separate this without thinking of a building, the cars, the people, and you can just to take the zoning as a concept. You know, I can fully appreciate that. I'm having the same problem. But I am reluctant to even consider the text amendment. So I have.
Commissioner Carmichael.
I'm glad I didn't have to go first, and I do appreciate everyone's input here. I'm trying to just consider this as a text amendment or not, you know, easy little. So if we say no to the text amendment tonight, then the next step would be an attempt for rezoning. Is that correct?
If you say no to the text amendment, it goes up to the village board. They can still,
of course,
grant that. If they were to deny it, then it's back to the drawing board for the developer, and they could perhaps look at this from another angle, which would be carve out a parcel and rezone it to R4 as a standalone parcel, with much like the residences of Oak Brook Hills, what occurred with their property. I guess that's an option. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit to hypothesize what might be the next steps, but
okay, another question. If this text amendment were approved at some future date, if the owners of the golf course decided to close the golf course and build residence there, they would have to, there wouldn't be a problem. They could just go ahead with this text amendment, and under the B3.
they would need a special use permit.
They would.
Yes. So they'd have to present plans, have a public hearing, et cetera.
Well, it's a difficult issue. I'm not sure it's that I'm in favor of just amending the text.
But Commissioner Carmichael, conceivably in the future, the golf course could be closed, special use permitted, and then all kinds of buildings go in there, residential. To further expand on your question. Okay. Okay, my turn. Part of our zoning codes are concerning the B3 Special Development District. I'm going to read something to you. Secondary uses are permitted in order to reduce the dependence of occupants of the Special Development District upon goods and services outside the Special Development District, and thereby reduce traffic congestion in such areas of intensive development. As Commissioner Carmichael alluded to, if we were to adopt this text amendment or recommend this text amendment, I could foresee the time in the future where the entire golf course could disappear. Special use come in, and we could see all kinds of residential buildings going in there. So we stand on the brink of creating something, or a ways to create something that would not be what I would consider advantageous to the village of Westmont. We did a long and thorough job when the golf course first came in with the hotel, and we suffered through their changes of ownership and worried about it because it's one of our premier properties as it stands. A couple of things that I would note, and I'm warning everybody, you can't look at this in context of a particular building, which is being alluded to. I look at it as could be a dozen buildings coming in there. The increased traffic would be, as far as I'm concerned, would be monumental to handle out there. Secondly, John, I see no differential, no differentiating between the residential, whether it would be condo or apartment.
Right. If it's, text amendment is allowed to
They could put
have
either or.
residential. The draft would allow all uses, all residential uses as permitted in the R4 district, and they'd have to comply with the bulk standards of the R4 district.
So it could be apartments?
Yes.
Okay.
It could be single family.
Okay, in my 30-some years on this board, we have never come in and agreed for a parcel to go to apartments. This village has never done apartments. The only apartments in this village were incorporated. They were built under county jurisdiction and incorporated into the village after they were done. The apartments we've got have not served us well. So if this text amendment, as it's printed right now, I would need a differentiating between condo, what's permitted, condo or apartments.
The way the text is drafted that I believe was in the packet, it would allow all R4 residential uses.
That's what I'm saying. So this would have to be rewritten. I couldn't vote for this the way it is. Also on the yard setbacks, unless there was a rezoning and re-subdivision, the yard setback under item E here, area and bulk requirements, unless I'm reading this wrong, John. Yard setback requirements shall only apply to perimeter properties for the entire B3 development and when adjacent to any other zoning districts. Diversified uses within the B3 Special Development District may allow for reduced setbacks for legally subdivided internal parcels when processed. So I'm reading that where we could almost have zero lot lines.
On the interior of the property. So the perimeter would have to maintain the established setbacks.
Okay, but that's the outline of the whole property, as I've taken this, not...
It's the outline of the whole property, or it's the outline of any B3 zoning district that abuts up against another zoned property. So in this case, the B3 district abuts up against the R4 district, so those setbacks would have to be maintained.
I understand that, but the possibility of somebody wanting to put an apartment project in the center, they would not have any setbacks.
Potentially, they would not have to worry about interior setbacks, and you're right, they would not have to worry about setbacks.
So
on
that's
the
a very serious flaws in my looking at it. I don't know if anybody else does.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Does
with
that make sense, what they're saying?
Yeah.
And I think that I think the reduced lot lines makes sense when you have compatible uses, but when we're talking about residential, which is not, I don't feel compatible with other business type uses, it doesn't, no longer make sense to have 0 setback and no visual or tangible barriers between the uses. That is a concern of mine as well.
Mr. Chair?
Do I make sense with my reasoning that...
You do make sense. There is a distance between buildings requirements that's part of the B3, so they'd still have to maintain the distance between buildings. A lot of the text that I drafted there was because when you have internal parcels and suddenly you don't know which is the front, which is the side, which is the rear. So that was kind of to address the fact that you have all these internal parcels that aren't separated by roads and rights-of-ways where you have what's the front, what's the side, what's the rear. So we wanted to make sure that there was a setback that's maintained to the perimeter so that there's no effect on the perimeter and to the existing residential, which is right in the middle of it.
In other words, Joe, the piece that's carved out, does it have a front and rear yard setback? Does it have a side setback? Or can they go right to the lot line?
It would be defined in the PD, is my understanding.
Right, and each of the individual lots have their own setbacks, which are reduced. I think some of them are at 5 feet.
What I gather from that then, it gives them carte blanche without anything definite in writing. And anytime you don't have anything definite being spelled out in writing, you got something ambiguous, it's not good.
And Mr. Chair,
I think in fairness, he's done the best he could to try and, to facilitate discussion on this situation. You know, he's tried to cover all the probability of certain things that, you know, which we haven't done this before, so, you know.
No. Wally, yes, I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and this would allow the commission to place special conditions on a development through the special use process. So each proposal would be based on its individual merits, as you discussed before, depending on whether it's single-family, townhomes, multifamily. So the commission can look at that and say, you know, you're proposing buildings too close to each other, they should be further apart based on the site plan review and the special use process.
True. If a building has a 0 lot line on the internal portion of the lot, but that building abuts up to an existing parking aisle, you guys would have the right through the special use process to say you have to push that building back because we think people need sidewalks and a little bit of green space, et cetera. That's kind of part of the planning review and site plan review process.
But that would have to be special uses that we would have to impose upon it at the time.
Absolutely. As it's stated now, there's no internal setback requirements.
Don't take me wrong, I don't mean to pick you, but I see where, as far as I'm concerned, this recommendation in its entirety is no good. I cannot support it. So please, let's have a round robin. Any commissioners feel like, Jan, you were saying you hated to go first, so.
Well,
No.
That's all right. No, it's okay. I'm good.
Does our discussion bring up any points that you want to
Yes,
bring up?
and I appreciate the input from the other commissioners, because as I said before, this is a struggle. We really want to support our community of residents who are here, and their concerns are valid. And on the other hand, as other commissioners have stated, if we say no, then the door closes. But my personal feeling is it's too ambiguous. There's too much that isn't clear. And I'm not sure if it's possible to move this and have more information brought forth, or if we really want to just go with the text amendment vote. And if that were the case, I would probably vote no.
Is your problem with the ambiguity that with the setbacks, or with the allowing all types of residential uses?
All types of residential uses is one. I think when the parking is an issue, and it seems to be too closed to put a large building with 700 potentially more people in that area, it would have to be, there'd have to be a lot of tweaking or revising, I would guess, of the proposal. We'd have to have strict oversight over it.
Commissioner Thomas.
I want to see the specific plans of each project and each proposal. I want to see the plans, whether there are setbacks or if there are not. And the only way I'm going to be able to see the specific plans and know that it's good or bad is if the text amendment is okayed and we go forward. Now, we go forward knowing that we have all kind of control, potential control and restrictions to be able to be put on these plans. But I want to see the plan. And the only way I'm going to be able to see the plan and judge whether it's yay or nay is for this amendment to go forward. And then us to do our jobs as a commission. And listen to the concerns of the people. Listen to the proposal people and judge, because without the text amendment, you'll see none of that. And you may miss out on a great plan. We'll just have to do our job, that's all. And that's oversee and do what our job is. That's all I got.
I have further thoughts, I guess, to somewhat counter your points. That I kind of agree with, again, with Commissioner Bartel, that I do feel that the text lacks a narrative, a direction, a purpose for this B3, because I feel like it's not, we're saying that economically it's not viable as it was originally intended, so we're introducing residential, but I feel like introducing it only as a special use adjacent to all of these original uses seems out of line to me, and that we need further thought on what is compatible. If residential is what's profitable right now, what is compatible with that? That's going to make this a unified development, to use the words of the zoning text, that is more feasible, I guess. And if the text, I mean, maybe it's more than just adding residential as a special use. Maybe it's rewriting more of what the B3 is. If the B3 is limited to this property, I mean, we're all struggling with differentiating between the property and the zoning, because this is the only property that's zoned this way. So can we not, I guess, have more direction on what this property could be, rather than just saying maybe it's a natatorium and it's a residential complex and it's a hotel? That seems kind of random to me, and without a larger narrative to go on, to your point, even the starting blocks are kind of set in place, and that gives me a little bit of fear that even the first plans that are presented lead us in a certain direction once they're presented to us. And maybe there should be more guidance on what that first plan looks like.
So as an example, and I think I understand,
maybe
if the text amendment were more specific and said, any residential uses shall be set back from the hotel and set back from any adjacent zoning district so many feet, and shall not exceed so many total square feet in lot area, and shall not exceed so many square feet in height. Are you talking about specifics like that?
I'm talking more, what's the purpose of the entire lot? Is it still an intensive use purpose? Is it mostly, are we still favoring business use? Are we now going to turn it into some kind of residential / commercial mixed use, large development? Is that what the future plan would be. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, is what are the constraints? We need to work within constraints rather than, I feel like, just being, critics of whatever happens to be brought to us. And that's the purpose of the comprehensive plan. But the comprehensive plan seems to be outdated in this lot.
Is that, Commissioner Sharp, when we first did this hotel, it was done on the presumption that this was to be Westmont's premier property in the western suburbs, coupled with almost a world-class golf course. And a very, very nice hotel, which has been, from what I'm hearing, full parking lots pretty much all the time. On a
Special events, not all the time.
Yeah, for a pretty doggone successful venue. But I look at this as, if we were to recommend this, is the golf course going to be cut to a 9-hole golf course in the future? Another apartment project put in? Condo project put in? Who knows?
But it wouldn't just come in, we'd have to approve it, right?
Yeah, and to be quite honest with you, I think my feelings are clear that I don't favor any residential in there whatsoever.
But then you would vote no?
I don't see it, oh, absolutely. It doesn't benefit the village one iota. My thoughts.
But neither does a big parking lot if it's not being utilized, and I think there still seems to be disagreement on how much it's utilized. I mean, I don't want to limit out the possibility of residential, I just want to see more forethought, rather,
What are the commissioners' informal poll on
Well, tonight we're asked.
putting this off?
No,
Study it some
no,
more, or shall we
no,
vote on
because
it?
you're not going to get any, unless you have a precipitating reason to go ahead and study this, you'll only do it with traffic studies and all that type of thing, and nobody's going to put that kind of money into something that
Well,
that
Wally-
they may or may not get. So I think that basically what we're talking about here is, do you want a residential within that property? That's really, and that will be my reason for refusing it, to consider this.
I echo your sentiments.
But, well, again, does changing the text amendment set a precedent that can come back and bite us sometime down the road, or not?
I believe there's a very good possibility of that happening. Now, some would argue that increased residential in lieu of a golf course would be good. My impression, my belief is that it would not be.
I don't think anybody has said that. No one has said that they were going to close down the golf course and we're going to bring in, if they decided to close the golf course and bring in residential, you'd have to bring in a plan. And we'd have to vote on it, yes or no. If you don't want that to be built up, you would say no. But without the text amendment, you're never going to see the plan. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, we have, we need a motion to amend Appendix A, Section 7.06 of the Westmont zoning code regarding the B3 Special Development District to allow for residential uses as a special use.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Thomas. Any question on the motion? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Sharp?
No.
Commissioner Van Buren votes no. Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
No.
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard?
No.
So what do we have?
3 to 4 denied.
3 to 4
Motion's
denied.
denied, 4 to 3. All right, sir, you have our recommendation for not to approve, and this will all be taken up at a committee of the, or village board meeting. And do you know when that might be, Jen? So,
No, we'll figure that out and let the commissioner.
okay,
or the
I would
commissioner know.
like everybody to keep abreast of the village website so you know when this will be discussed at the village board level. Next item on the agenda, Planning and Zoning Item 16004, SKE Property Investments regarding the property located at 230 South Cass, Westmont. For item A, zoning code variance request for relief from the minimum square feet per building in an R4 general residence district. Item B, zoning code variance request for relief from the maximum allowable density in the R4 general residence district. Item C, site and landscaping plan approval to build a new single-family semi-detached dwelling. Gentlemen, thank you very much for putting up with this. I do appreciate it.
My fault.
If you would, please.
Sure. My name is Ian McDonald. I'm here on behalf of SKE Properties. I'm the architect. And basically what we're looking to do is we're asking for two variances. One is that our lot is only 60 by 151, which is 976.8 square feet. And we're looking to seek a variance so that our property has 6,700. Zoning code only allows 2 units on a property if the property has 6,700 square feet per 3-bedroom units. This property only has 4,538 per unit. And then the second variance is that the zoning code only allows 2 units on a property if the total square footage of the property is greater than 12,000 square feet. And this property is 9,076 square feet. What we're proposing is similar to what else is on the street. So we feel like we're kind of basically keeping up with everything that has already been allowed in the area. The variance, if altered, will not really alter any of the essential character of the location. There are still similar buildings that have gone through the same process in order to yield a reasonable return for the owner. And like I said, I think the essential character of what we have proposed kind of is in sync with everything else. We did change the front elevation for full brick as opposed to just siding, half brick and siding front.
Mr. Chair, just to reiterate what Ian had said, basically the lot's a little over 9,000 square feet. In order to allow what is defined as a single-family semi-detached, it's a duplex in most terminology, there are two basic requirements. The first is lot size. Our code requires 12,000 square feet for that lot size. So this does not meet that minimum. Secondly, there's a density requirement based on number of bedrooms. Currently, the duplex is proposed to have 3 bedrooms in each unit. That would require 5,000 square feet per unit or a 10,000 square foot lot. Doesn't have that because it's at 9,000 square feet. There is precedent. The lots to the north, there are 2 directly to the north, then I think a single-family home, and then 1 to the north of that. That had back, I think the newest one was built in the 2001, somewhere in that region. Very similar. The difference is that the applicant is not asking to subdivide this lot, which those other units had been subdivided so that there's a property line running down the middle of the building, in essence creating 2 4,500 square foot lots. And so this is maintaining the same lot size, so it is maintaining the character of the neighborhood. And as the applicant did say, and I think in the staff memo, it does state that we would require or request that it be a full brick facade to match the other ones. The applicant has provided those drawings that will go to village board. They have shown the entire front facade as brick. Being in the R4 district, it's not required. It's a request that they've acknowledged.
Okay. Anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this issue? If you would, sir. Did I swear you in at first? Okay, thank you.
I just moved up here so I could hear.
Okay. If you would sign in and give us your name,
I'm
please.
signed in and sworn. My name's Kurt Van Dam, and I live at the corner of Lincoln and Des Moines. And I look out at this property off the back side of my house, and I've lived here all my life. My concern, and the people directly behind me, is the same kind of a building. I don't have a problem with that. My only concern is stormwater. When it rains, that lot floods. I mean, it goes down pretty quick. But that's where, you know, it's at the bottom of the hill, and everything goes that way. I'm not looking down the road to be, you know, have somebody coming at me up the hill from them and saying I have to do something because they're flooding. And is this being looked at by engineering when they cover up this much lot? Where's the water going? That's my only concern.
Okay. Joe, could you?
And engineering will be looked at, best management practices will be required. I think that they are proposing a, I don't know what you'd call it, not being an engineer, but there is an on-site vault for the stormwater, and then their proposal does meet the lot coverage requirements for the zoning.
I believe our stormwater code also demands that they store all of the displaced water by the impervious surface for detention and then released at a certain period of time?
Yes, it's slowed down, so it's stored in the vault and then slowly released per our code requirements. And that'll be reviewed by our engineer as part of the final
Is the
engineer.
vault a dry well?
It's actually, I think it's a structure beyond a dry well. A dry well is basically you dig a pit and you fill it with gravel.
Right.
This is actually a containment unit that's underneath the ground.
Okay, and does it have a release on it?
It does have a release, and I think there is a storm sewer under
Okay.
CAS that it will release into.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Is
has
that
a
correct,
restrictor
guys?
structure.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Should that, if there's a problem now, would that have any chance of relieving it even more than it is today? Because right today, it's just going to run over the surface, whatever happens there. If that is flooding now.
Right, I don't know if it will necessarily improve the situation, but it won't make it worse.
It won't make it worse.
Right,
okay.
and the water will be contained before being released, whereas now, it's like you said, it's running directly off the site.
Okay.
Is there anybody from the public who will speak further on this issue? Please, if you would, sir. Can I presume I did swear you in?
You did swear me in, and I have signed in as well.
Thank you.
You're very thorough. My name is Kurt Nussbaum. I'm the owner of 234 South Cass, which is the property just south of the proposed building. And yes, there is definitely a water problem there. The earth underneath my building has been shifting, and since we've owned the property for the past 3 years, it appears that we've lost about 3 or 4 inches of soil towards the north. The slope there along Cass, some of you may know, we had the luge, the U.S. luge people out there on the hill.
Oh, yes.
The building built to the south of us is uphill from us, and we don't know if they have a stormwater catch and if that stormwater does go to the stormwater system or not. But we've suffered foundation cracks. The concrete driveway has broken in multiple pieces, and it's very obvious along the foundation of the home that the soil has dropped. So what I'm requesting is to find out how to get involved with engineering so I'm aware of what can be done when they build the property to make sure that the movement of soil ceases. I looked at the plans, and in the plans it says they will be removing a concrete wall, which I'm assuming was built many years ago to, you know, stop this migration of the soil down the hill. So my biggest concern is not having any more damage to my property. We already have water that leaks in through the foundation, and I'm hesitant to make any repairs until I can make sure that we basically stop the soil from moving. So my question here is, who at Westmont should I be involved with so I'm in the loop and can see that assessment of the soil and the drainage of that area?
Joe or I can get you in touch with our village engineer, and then we'll set up a meeting with you and review the engineering plans and explain all of that, and go over it in detail.
Okay. And as far as the new building, I'm assuming the buildings to the north had a very similar variance. And when we bought the property 3 years ago, it was for an investment. It's our first investment, so you watch all those TV shows and it looks like a good idea to buy something and fix it up and hopefully make a profit. We are a little alarmed that all of a sudden we're going to be this little tiny house amongst all these large multifamily dwellings. We were, of course, hoping that a nice big single-family home would go in next door and raise our property value. But we can't stop somebody who's, you know, doing what they legally can do. I'm assuming without them getting a variance, there's other options they can do. But so I'm not arguing the variance. I'm just concerned about the item C on this list, which was site and landscaping plan approval. We definitely need to make sure that the flooding and the water management in that area is taken care of.
And sir, you're uphill from this property? Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, and I have photographs if anybody wants to see. It's very clear that there is a large movement of at least 50% of the earth width-wise of our property that is sliding downhill.
Is there a swale between your property and the property to the south of you? By a swale, I mean, you know,
Ditch.
a ditch between,
No, there's not.
just have sheet runoff coming from the lot higher up than you.
Correct. And it does go into some of that black corrugated tubing, but we have no idea where that goes and how it's contained.
Well, in fair warning, you absolutely should and are entitled to view the engineering proposed for this property, but to the extent there are problems happening upstream, this property is not going to engineer problems for an entire block. They're going to engineer for their property, and that's what they're required to do by code. And I think hearing your comments about, you know, the sliding of earth may result in a retaining wall or something like that, I don't know, on their property, but they're certainly not going to analyze the whole neighborhood. And
Oh, understood. But I'm assuming as they look at removing this current retaining wall, somebody will assess that, I'm assuming. You don't just take a concrete wall that's holding several feet of earth back away. and
Is that
assume-
wall on your property? Is that on the property line, or is it?
It may have been at one time.
Yeah, don't.
I don't know. I've not looked to see if I can get earlier public records of surveys done of that property.
But your current plat, does it show it?
Unfortunately, when we bought this property, it was a foreclosure, and we do not have the survey at the time. So I do not know. I'd
But
have
your
to-
current, you have a current survey.
I do not. Yeah, believe it or not, when you buy a foreclosure and do it through the government, you don't need that. They'll give you, they'll let you buy a home without it. So I'd have to go back to public records.
It seems from the site, well, maybe I should, am I allowed to speak? From the site plan, it looks like it's actually crossing both properties.
Which would possibly argue that either it was
So maybe it
installed
slid down.
incorrectly or the area that it does move into their property is where we see the most damage. So,
Okay.
who owns it when it slides across a property line?
Let's start with Commissioner Carmichael, so we'll go back to one at a time.
Close the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, is there anybody else from the public? Yes, please, if you would, sir. Thanks, John.
Sure.
I believe so.
My name is Robert Vaselsky. I represent the Christian Brothers who own the properties just North of 230, we're at 226, 224, 222, 220.
Those beautiful properties, I might
Yeah,
add.
well, thank you very much. Brother David keeps them up very well. Just that we've had flooding in our basements in the last several years. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the drainage or the water coming down that way, but we've had some difficulty.
Is it seepage or is it coming through the sewer? Do you have a floor drain in your basement?
Yes.
Is it coming up through there?
I wasn't present when the flood took place, but it came up, certainly, and we had to have both basements redone. So, I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that there was some flooding in our homes because of how it slopes. I think it's because of the slope.
Well, if it's coming through the floor drain, it's not because of the slope. It means that your drain is surcharged when it gets a lot of water and that it has nowhere to go, so it comes up in your house. Now, if it's coming through seepage through the walls, then that's another story. Then it has to do with your surface, your raining on the surface. So I don't know which it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure myself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else will speak on this? Okay, we're going to close the public comment. Let's start with Commissioner Carmichael, if you would.
Would, the number that I saw that it concerned me was that at 24%, seemed it's a lot. But if these were two-bedroom, would that change? Part of the justification on this sort of thing
up to the podium and so you can answer questions.
is not that they're family units so much as they are single person and a married couple without kids, and the third bedroom would.
It would change the requirement for the one variance where it needs to have 10,000 square feet right now. If it was two-bedroom units, it would need to have 9,000 square feet. So it would pass that threshold because it's over 9,000 square feet. But it does not pass the threshold of the minimum 12,000 square feet to have a single-family semi-detached. And our code does kind of vary throughout there. And I think it's really in terms of definition, because actually if you go down to the multiple family dwelling, which is defined as 3 units or more, which is a higher density than this is, it actually requires 7,800 square feet lots, which is a smaller requirement. And you know, I wasn't here when this was passed, so I can't give you the background as to the difference in those. But there are, the 24% does seem high, but actually if they were doing multifamily, it would be a lower standard.
Okay, thank you.
But if I could chime in to that point, why 3 bedrooms as opposed to 2? Is it a market demand issue or what?
Yeah, I think just market, you know. I think you can appeal to more people if you have a 3-bedroom unit as opposed to a 2-bedroom.
Yeah, because it's more like a house than it is a townhome. People expect to have 3 bedrooms in a home, they'll have a family in this
I
place.
figured, I was asking him, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have any further questions.
Okay, Commissioner Van Buren?
The question that Commissioner Carmichael had was about whether it were 2 bedrooms, but as I recall, this is the same, the units that we refer to that are right on the same block have 3 bedrooms?
I think when the variances went through in 2000, 2001, it was for 3 bedrooms.
For 3 bedrooms.
If they still have 3 bedrooms versus
Yeah,
having
and
them
would
remodeled.
the variance, if they were coming in today and had they not split the lot, this would be a similar request?
It is
Identical?
almost identical request. It's just they went one step further to say, we are also splitting the lot onto little 4,500 square foot pieces.
I don't have any problem with it.
Commissioner Pill?
Thank you. I was curious, the basis for your presentation was that similar properties have been developed. There's 3 of them just adjacent to your property. And I was curious, with that argument in mind, and that was the main part to your presentation, why you didn't show a brick front on the buildings to start with?
I would say just, a lot of the new houses that are going up now in the area, you see kind of a East Coast style to them where there isn't as much brick. If you go through like Hinsdale and in other areas, a lot of the new homes, they're doing a lot with the siding that can really, it looks nice, so I guess it was just a design decision, really.
Because it would seem that you'd want to match sort of what we've got. And I was a little surprised when I saw the original drawings, because I knew that this is where you were going to base the petition based on the previous recommendations and things, and I was curious. Did you guys already cut down trees on the property?
I cannot.
Yeah, there's a few of them there. For hazard more than anything else.
I'm sorry, what was that?
He needs to step up to the microphone.
There was trees on the property and they were a hazard. They were dead. So that's why I took them down.
I see.
I think the guys to the north took a few down as well. I think they were dead as well. Yeah.
I know Bob Fleck seemed to be surprised that he went out to inspect the trees and there were no trees. Is that an issue from the village's standpoint or from this petitioner?
Bob Fleck will follow up on it, and if there's been any violation of the ordinance, then they would have to plant additional trees.
And I think that his comments do address that they will need to do more trees to replace some of what was taken down.
They do, so we'll tie into that. Okay. I generally have no problem with this. I just hope that we're going to stick to the plans and create a nice building, and that we're going to go ahead and follow the detention rules and whatever the staff recommends as far as engineering and things like that, so that there aren't any further problems for these two homeowners, as well as the homeowners to the north side, and any who aren't here tonight. So that would be my only words of caution, would be, let's make sure we have a nice project when it's finished.
Commissioner Thomas?
I agree. I'm in support of it. It continues to transition from South Cass to downtown area, and I appreciate the addition of the brick. And I think it'll fit in nicely. It's very similar to what's there, and you're not going to stick out, and you're going to add, and you're not going to subtract to the neighborhood. I'm in favor of it.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yeah, I also think it's a good project. It's always exciting, every lot that gets developed and built. I did have a question, just for my curiosity. The decision, one of the things, maybe the only thing highlighted that was different than your precedents was that you are not subdividing your lots. Is that just a business decision, or is there more to that?
I think it's just an oversight. What's the advantage there?
Could you please speak at the podium? Otherwise, the audience cannot hear you at home.
What's the advantage of subdividing? I think I probably should, if everybody else is doing it.
With the other cases, they subdivided so that each half could be sold. And
Oh,
then
yeah,
by-
so
And then by subdividing the property along the wall, then you also it means that you don't need to create either an HOA for exterior maintenance or some sort of joint maintenance on the outside.
So I think we'll probably have to do that as well.
Alternatively, if you were just renting these and keeping ownership yourself, then you would not have to subdivide.
Well, I'm not renting.
Or if
Okay.
you were to market it to a live-in owner that wants to rent out the other half.
Yeah, but if you're trying to sell both halves of the duplex, you should subdivide, and you can come in and see Jill and Joe, and they'll help you with the process.
Okay.
But I think that would require coming back here for another density variance, because then they're on much smaller pieces. So you'd be re-entering into this process.
Okay, I guess we'll.
Maybe we should extend the hearing then.
Well, one option is, you guys can, you have the option of continuing this public hearing to a later date so you can work out those details.
Maybe we should do that.
You also have the option of getting a recommendation, figuring it out, and then having it referred back, but in that case, you'd have to republish, and you'd spend more money to go through newspaper publication, et cetera.
Oh, okay.
But there again, John, on our agenda, we're not voting on a re-subdivision.
Well, what we're saying is if you postponed it, it would be republished.
We'd have to add to the public
It
notice.
would be added, but no new notice is required for a subdivision other than putting it on the agenda.
So that would save them a fair amount of money then?
40.
Yeah, save them a couple $100 and,
Except for the density variance, if we had to change that.
oh yeah, so that would have to be republished.
Well, they're just requesting I guess the request for a density variance has already
Yeah,
been
it's already
published. So it's
published,
a
you're right.
generic, so we would change what the total is. Yeah, we could do that.
So it could be done?
Yeah. we can
Okay, do you understand what we're talking about, sir? It would behoove you to subdivide this into 2 lots,
Yes.
so you could sell each one individually.
Yeah, that's what.
To do that, we cannot vote on your request tonight.
Unless we have to bring you back and you have to refile, pay the fee all over again.
We're trying to save you some money,
Okay.
okay?
All about saving money?
And I think you hear by the tenor of 5 out of the 6 commissioners are pretty much in favor of it. So we're just trying to save you some money if we postpone this.
So I'll just come meet Joe and reorganize it, as we'll say.
Commissioner Bartel,
That's
I
fine.
I jumped ahead of you, but.
That's okay, I'm supportive as well.
Okay, a motion to postpone this until,
April 13th.
A motion, is it a motion to postpone or a motion to
Continue.
Continue.
continue?
motion to continue.
It's a motion to postpone is the technical terminology, as Clerk Simsky has told us over and over from her clerk's training class on Robert's Rules of Order. So motion to postpone until the April 13th meeting.
Yeah, I'm confirming.
President was right.
You are always right, sir, in my eyes.
Lord,
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion, motion to postpone, motion by Commissioner Van Buren, seconded by Commissioner Sharp. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Any commissioner comments, any news? Motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.